Hi everyone, this is NewBarC here. I'm going to try something a little new today and just set up dRonin on the new Seppuku flight controller. I'm just going to start recording and start doing things and hopefully narrate in a way that isn't complete nonsense and gibberish. Normally when I speak I mumble, I stutter, and I mispronounce things, so this could be a fun ride. I already have the flight controller wired up, so I'm just going to go ahead and connect it through USB. In the bottom right down here, you'll see a little activity window when you start seeing everything connect up. And there it is. And the thing about dRonin that I do like, well, one of the things that I like, is I can go through and I can start configuring all this stuff manually as you would in Betaflight or anything else, or I can make use of the vehicle setup wizard, which makes things pretty easy. You get a nice little warning here saying this wizard will guide you through the basic steps, yada yada yada. Remove all propellers from the vehicle before proceeding. If you don't do that, I cannot be responsible for your actions, and you probably shouldn't be in this hobby. Props off. Every time. There's no excuse. Props off. As you can see, it properly identified the board as the Seppuku, and everything's happy with that. And I can disconnect and reconnect if I have problems, but I'm not having problems. In this case, you're going to pick your input signal. This is going to be your receiver. If it's standard, a lot of people are using PPM. In this case, I am actually using SBus. So I'm going to click that and just hit next. And it's going to ask me real big to reboot. So there's no like magic reboot button. I'm just going to disconnect the USB and then plug it back in. Now that that's back up, I hit next. And I get to indicate which vehicle type I'm using. There are a couple that are supported here. I don't really get the option of clicking on any of those. You only get multi-rotor. I don't know if that's a software thing or a hardware thing, but that's all you can choose, and that's all I want to choose. So I'm going to hit next. I am using the quadcopter type X. You can choose tricopters, hexacopters, pretty much everything. Now I notice that there is not a opticopter option here. The Seppuku does have 8 PWM outputs, so maybe that'll get added soon. I'm going to go ahead and go with quadcopter X. Here is where you'll specify what kind of ESCs you're using, whether that be one-shot, D-shot supported now, all those. I think the ESCs I'm using on this one are 125, so I'm going to go with those. Get you a nice little summary here, and I can actually click on this hardware connection illustration. If you haven't connected everything already, it'll tell you what goes where. As you can see, here's my video and ground into the video imports, my VTX video, ground, and audio into the VTX. Now here's the thing about this. If you're going to be using smart audio with one of the TVS Unify Pros, your audio is not going to be connected to that audio port. You're actually going to run that over to one of your serial ports, which are going to be these pink ones, these orange ones, or even this purple one here. You're only going to connect the TX side. That'll run to the audio channel on your video transmitter. If you're not using that, then go ahead and hook up your audio if you have it available. My receiver is going to be connected here on the right, and I want to solder the 5-volt jumper. You get the option of voltage in 5 volt or 3.3. That's what is going to be sent to your receiver. So if I would solder a bridge on VIN, it's going to get the full battery voltage. I don't want that to happen. I'm going to go ahead and click next here. And the first thing it's going to ask for here is the sensor calibration. This is your accelerometers, so you want to set your quad up somewhere nice and flat and stable so where it's not going to move. I'm going to prop a corner of mine up actually, and then just hit calculate. Once you click that, don't touch it, don't look at it, don't breathe, just let it do its job. And there it's completed, so we'll just go on with next. And now this is the point where we're going to calibrate our motors. During this we will be asked to connect and disconnect the battery. Leave your USB connected up actually while you're doing this, but again, make sure your props are not connected. You don't know what's going to happen. Hopefully everything works right, but it might not. The first time I did this back in the day, I had a quadcopter pretty much launch off my desk. No one told me about props off back then, so I'm telling you. So now I've got a battery with me, I've got my quad in front of me, and it is prompting to go ahead and connect the battery, so I'm going to do that now. And then I will click next when ready. So now it is there. It is not armed or anything like that, but what's going to happen here is I'm going to click start and start raising this dial here, or this slider. That's going to eventually start spinning up the motor if everything's okay. Once it starts doing that, then leave it there and hit stop. This will set your neutral rate for the motor. So I'm going to click start raising this slowly. And there's my motor spinning up. I can go a little bit higher if I want to, but I'm going to leave it right there and hit stop. I'm going to leave that slider where it is and just click next. Now we're doing the same thing for the other motor. Okay, starts up at about the same spot. Hit stop. This is also a good time to note whether or not your motors are spinning in the right directions. It's low RPM, it's just one motor at a time. You can take a look at them, put a piece of tape on them, or just lightly touch them with your finger to find out which direction they're spinning in. I'm going to continue on with my other two motors here, just making sure that I get them spinning in the right direction and that they are at a nice default value for the neutral. Alright, so all four are done now. I'm going to hit next one more time. And it's ready to save. Now, because it's ready to save, I can go ahead and disconnect my battery at this point. No use draining that. I'm going to click save. And as you can see, that was really quick. It's ready, it's done. I'm going to go ahead and click next. And my wizard is completed. It's now I have the option again, going in and configuring more things manually or going through the radio setup wizard. I really recommend this because again, it just makes it easy. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on my radio. I actually already have it bound. I did that, before I put the top and stuff on my quad. All right, so there, got my radio on. I've got the right model selected. Go ahead and click the radio setup wizard. Gives you a nice little warning saying that your arming settings will always be set to disarmed for your safety. Once you finish the setup, you'll choose how you want to arm the aircraft. This is just a little welcome screen here. We're just going to click next right through. It's going to ask you to choose my transmitter type, mode 1 or mode 2. It defaults to mode 2 if I believe, so I'm going to click next. You now have the option between acro or heli. In most cases, you're going to leave this at acro. And here it's asking me to move my throttle, so I'm going to move that as it shows. Now it detected that, so it's going to move on to the other one. So now I'm on the roll stick, I'm going to move that. It detected it, so I've let go. Move my pitch. And finally my yaw. Next it's asking me for my flight mode switch. Now of course it's indicating it here on the upper right, but that's not where mine is, so I'm just going to move my flight mode switch. There we go. Accessory 1. These are going to be channels 6 and 7, I believe, and 8 if you have a third accessory on there. You can assign those to anything you want in your transmitter. If you don't have them, you can just go ahead and click next and it will skip those. I have 2 of them assigned, so here's my accessory 0. There it goes. Here's my accessory 1. Now I don't have anything assigned for accessory 2, so I'm going to click next. And now it's asking me for my arming switch, so I'm going to do that. There it goes. So at this point it's asking me to center everything, so I'm going to center or toss the switch up if it's only a 2 position. And click next, and this will go through calibration. So I want to move everything to its full extent to make sure that I've got all my min and max values correct. Switches, 3-position switch here, and my arming switch. You can see it moving there. So you should be able to see everything. Now, if one of the sticks is moving, but it's an opposite to what you're moving, don't worry about that right now. We can change that in the next screen, which I'll go ahead and click next now. there. So as you can see, it's asking if something is incorrect. For instance, right now my pitch is backwards. I just put a check mark over here on pitch, and then it matches. So I can double check everything is moving the way I want it to. Good. Alright. So now my radio should be set up well. I'm going to click next. Now it's going to verify my fail-safe. In this case, really all you need to do is turn off the transmitter. Alright, so you see it detected that very quickly. Turn my transmitter back on. And there we go. So that's working. It's happy about that. Now if you don't have that, you can bypass the fail-safe check if you don't have a working fail-safe, but by all means you should. And finally, it's just going to basically give you a screen that says, hey, everything works, so you're good there. I'm going to hit next, and this will let me set up my arming settings. I'm going to set that to my switch, which is right there. I do want my throttle low before arming, so that if for some reason my throttle stick isn't low and I hit that switch, it's not going to arm. You can have it calibrate gyros once you arm. So right now, once I flick that arm switch, it's still going to take a full second before arming, and that's when it's actually doing the gyro calibration. Now since I'm arming from a switch, it'll also disarm by a switch. You can have it automatically disarm. In this case, let's say I'm armed but my throttle's low for longer than 30 seconds. It's going to disarm, and that's pretty handy. Now should my failsafe be on for longer than 2 seconds as well, I want it to disarm. So if I crashed or went into failsafe mode somewhere, it'll disarm and dump this thing somewhere, which is bad for the quad but good for people and personal property. If I click save again, and that's it. Everything should be happy. I can go through, I can look at my everything here. Now one thing I did notice, and there's my accessory 1 and accessory 2, you want to set these trigger levels most likely in the middle. I'm not sure why it does it like that, but that way you've got a definite low, and when I flick it, it's definitely high. There's no maybe there. You can see my flight mode is a 3 position, so you can kind of see how that plays out, and my arming switch, which is set, correctly for that. So everything's good there. Now here's where I can actually set my flight mode just by going to the flight mode switch settings. Position 1 I have for leveling, position 2 I have at acro, and 3 was set for stabilized. I'm actually going to change that. I do want leveling for my first one. Let's play around with horizon just to get a feel for this aircraft since it's new. And then 3, I'm actually going to do auto tune. Auto tune is a flight mode in and of itself, but it's also a module that you need to enable, and that's done here on the left side. If you go down to auto tune, you have to put a check mark here and enable auto tune module and then click save. Once that's done, you can then choose that as a flight mode here. The way the auto tune works, I'll cover in maybe a later video, but basically you take the quad up and put it in auto tune flight mode. It'll wobble around for 60 seconds, getting a feel for the response time of when the flight controller asks for a movement and when the motors and ESCs can actually respond to that. It collects all this data, and then you come back and you plug it back into the dRonin GCS software. It uses a cloud service to calculate what the best PIDs would be based on the actual response time of your hardware. So it's not just trying things to figure out what's best for it and kind of just tossing out there. It's actually doing calculations based on your actual hardware, which is a really neat way of doing it, and it actually does work very well. Any peripherals you've connected are going to be configured through the hardware tab. As you can see, it shows a nice image of the Seppuku flight controller and lines up everything so we can see what ports do what. In this case, I'm not using UART 3, so it is disabled right now, but you get lots of options. You can say ComBridge, debug, if I want to put a GPS in here, telemetry, all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's just huge, all the different options you have. I do have my telemetry set up on UART 6, and on UART 1 I'm using the TBS Smart Audio. I've got that run to my TBS Unify Pro HV. And what that allows me to do is configure my band, frequency, in the video transmitter power directly through the OSD. So I don't have to worry about dip switches or button codes and LEDs and all that stuff. I just power up and hop into the OSD and set to whatever channel I want to be on, whatever power I want to be on for the day, and hit apply, and I'm ready to go. On the stabilization tab, you can make some changes as to your rates and everything like that. Personally, I think this is better handled through the auto tune and then using your OSD to change your rates and your expo. That way you can kind of get a feel for it as you go. The interface here is good, but I think sometimes it's a little confusing, where it's a lot easier to deal with on the OSD. There's just less looking at you. If you know going out that you want high rates or anything like that, you can go ahead and change that here and change the transition. That's going to modify those. You can change the center slope as well. You can really change your rate of rotation there, and as far as what you want full stick to be and how high and how crazy you want those rates to go. There's a lot there to play with, and I think it does a really good job as far as displaying it for you and helping you figure out what's what. The modules are all the different other things that you can turn on. For instance, I've turned on battery monitoring with the Seppuku, and then go to the battery tab and set up your values so you can actually get your voltage readings on your OSD or via your telemetry. I don't have a current monitor set up right now, so I have that disabled. If I was firing any RGB LEDs, you could go here and also do some configuration for that. The configuration is not as in-depth as what you see in Betaflight, but it's not bad. On the OSD tab is where you would configure your OSD, obviously. I've got this set up to where on position 1 I have it set to custom 1, and the custom tabs are where you'll actually define what you want your OSD to look like. Position 2 I have set up to menu, and I have this going through my accessory 1 switch. This will allow me to have my OSD as normal when flying, and then I can flip a switch when on the ground to access the in-flight menu. The menu is where I can change my video transmitter settings, my PIDs, my rates, all that stuff through the OSD, which is a really nice feature, and I know that a lot of that is coming to other firmwares as well, but it was really in dRonin where I think I saw that first. Well, probably MWOSD back in the day, but they do a really good job of it, and their menu is a little bit more in depth and really well done. Where this does lack is on the custom pages itself. There are a lot of options and things you can put on your OSD, but configuring how they're laid out isn't exactly the best way of doing it. Even though the OSD functionality in Betaflight is rather new, they at least have a drag and drop editor that I really like. Here in dRonin, everything is based on positions, so really the only way I've found to really customize my OSD is to hook up the battery and broadcast to like my goggles or an LCD monitor and just kind of type everything in as I go and hit apply and see how it looks in real time. If you do it that way, just make sure to hit save, otherwise all that hard work is lost the next time you do it, so that's no fun. Once you've completed the vehicle setup and the radio wizard, you've got your flight modes configured the way you want, you've got your rates the way you want, you've got your OSD the way you want. Really all that's left is to take it out and fly and see what you think. By all means, check out the auto tune. It works really well, especially for new pilots, and takes a whole lot of the guesswork out of tuning in the beginning. It's not perfect, but it will give you a good starting tune, again, especially for new pilots, just to kind of get used to things. If you have any questions, be sure to check out the dRonin site. There's a lot of good support there. There's a lot of good support on Facebook as well, or leave me a message in the comments and I'll see if I can help you out.